And we're live. Content provided at the event is for general information only, not intended to provide specific or recommendations or advice for any individual. Any performance referenced is historical, no guarantee of future results. All indices are unmanaged and may not be invested into directly. Any economic forecast set forth during the event may not develop as predicted. There can be no guarantee that any strategy will be successful. These opinions are those of Gimbal Financial and do not represent the views of LPL Financial. Securities offered through LPL Financial, member of FINRA SIPC. Investment advice offered through Gimbal Financial, registered investment advisor, and separate entity from LPL Financial. Not curious investors. Good morning, Keith. Good morning, Doug.
Amanda said that our views don't match LPL's. Have you ever found that your views actually match anybody's exactly?
No, I just don't think differently.
I have a desire to share less and less of my views.
Yeah. Probably better that way. Well, happy Friday.
Happy Friday. I've had a fantastic week this week. Family and business, and you know, a lot of you guys, when you come in or when we talk on the phone and share life together, I'm blown away with what you have going on. And Gimbal has really 3 parameters we're looking for in client relationships. And so that includes you. And the first one is we like to work with interesting people. Interesting people help me go home with some excitement and zip in my life, and instead of going home with my head down. And so thank you for being interesting people. 2, we like to work with people who are interested in advice or counsel or wisdom. You don't have to take it, but if you're interested in it, that's the type of person we like to work with. And then the last thing is we like to work with people who have money because it takes money to invest. But one of you stopped by the office this week and you shared something really touching with me. 20, 30 years ago, I can't remember exactly when, this person went to Nicaragua on a mission trip, and he's been going back ever since. But in those early years, he made a friend, and this friend came up to him and said, "Hey, I'll drive you around Nicaragua, and I'll speak the language for you." And anyway, this friend was killed in a motorcycle accident just before Christmas a couple years back. And our Gimbal client friend has a desire to build this guy's family a house. And he was sharing with me this story about these kids and this guy's wife, and it just really was touching. And so I just appreciate what you guys have going on and what you are concerned about and what is on your mind. And I'm happy that you trust us enough to share those things, because like, yeah, we don't go around sharing our opinions with a lot of stuff because nobody cares. But I want to thank you for sharing the things that are really on your heart. And we want to be here to cheer you on with that. I didn't even plan on leading with that, but I was just so excited that you stopped by this week and shared that with me.
Very cool. Very cool. What else do we need to know, Amanda?
I've got the COVID update. I know this week it's been fully announced that we've really taken a turn for the better. Like we discussed last week, we've got a huge decrease in the number of cases. There's obviously been a spike in deaths, but as there are fewer cases, hopefully there are fewer deaths. So none of us can predict the future. Unfortunately, our crystal ball was stolen, so we really don't know what's to come, but we might just be over this hump. And we've always been optimistic through this, even though it's been challenging at times, but it could really be near the end.
That's cool. I was traveling this week and was in a store for which they established their own parameters and guidelines, and I actually saw people's entire faces there. And I was like, I remember the old days when you could see a person smile. And so it was an interesting experience. And I wonder, I'd be curious to your all's input. Maybe email us and let us know your input. Like, what is it going to look like for you once you've been either vaccinated or you feel comfortable to get back out in public again? What's that going to look like? How are you going to integrate yourself back into the culture? I was talking to a client this week who got their second shot, and they said, first of all, they're going to go hang out with their friends, their age group who've had their vaccinations, and still wear their masks. And then secondly, they may start going back to church. That's their kind of exit plan from our closed culture to more of an open one. So be curious to your all's input.
Yeah, I know I've spoken with some of you this week even where you tell me the first thing you're going to do is visit with your grandkids that you haven't seen them in quite a while. We're excited for you on that. We're excited for you to strengthen those family relationships again.
Well, I'll need it. We'll need a big hug after this is all said and done. So hopefully that's sooner rather than later.
I think it will be. Doug, what do we need to talk about in the markets?
Yeah, it's been a good week for the markets. Last week was pretty volatile. Can we go to the VIX real quick? Let's just start there. VIX being an index that shows the ups and downs and the swings of the markets. This is something that we started tracking with you all from our very first show. Our very first show was during all the chaos of February and March, and so we started to track this index, and it's just, again, it's a reflection of really the fear and the greed in the marketplace, and what we've noticed. If you go all the way to the right and look here recently, we've had some pretty long lines. And Keith, you talk about long lines. What is it about long lines that you don't like?
Well, and I had an idea I wanted to run by everybody too, and I'll show you some long lines on that. But here's where we've been on the VIX. And the VIX is measured by something called stock options, and it's a mathematical calculation of how they calculate this. But if you look over here to the left, back in October and November over here, each one of these lines, whether it's pink or blue, is a day's activity in the way that particular measurement has evolved. And over here, these on my screen, these things are less than a quarter or an eighth of an inch long in this section right in here. And then we had the COVID lockdown where they shifted almost immediately, where these lines in this section went almost, some of these are an inch, some of these are an inch and a half, some are like this one is like 2 inches long. And that just means it's dangerous water to be swimming. It's a dangerous place to try to speculate or to just jump in. And as these things settle down, the markets tend to be a little less crazy for investors. And we've had a couple times since last spring where the market has popped up like that. We just went through one here in the last probably a week and a half where it really jumped up again. And those tend to just cause a lot of craziness. And I think this one might have been caused by the Wall Street bets crowd that were throwing stocks around out there.
Yeah, so it seems that was a pretty short or temporary long line, and the lines moved down. And so what are we at right now, price-wise? I can't see my eyes.
I jumped
Oh, you jumped, okay. Well, anyway.
We're at about 21 on the VIX right now.
So that's a pretty good number, 21. When we start getting closer to 30, that's when I start biting my nails again. And so we where we're at right now is reasonable. And so investment portfolios, to have some money invested seems like a reasonable thing.
Cool. What else? Do we need to talk about anything else specific out there in the marketplaces?
Highlight, well, I don't know the ticker for silver. Don't worry about it.
Okay.
I wanted to talk commodities a little bit. Commodities are interesting because really they don't dance with a regular stock. A regular stock has earnings, it has sales, it has people involved, it has ideas and vision. Whereas a commodity, it's just It has none of that. I mean, it doesn't have any sales. It doesn't have any earnings. There's no new product coming out. It's just an underlying tradable good. And so it's traded a lot of times off supply and demand or fear and greed. And so this past week, we saw some of that action with silver being propped up, and then it came back down to a little bit more reasonable level. But anyway, we've been watching commodities, and I've been watching them a little closer this year, just out of interest to see where people are putting their capital and how they feel about maybe some risk of inflation or what the dollar could be worth. And so you may even see some commodities inside portfolios in 2021.
Yeah, I think the reality that makes this market cycle different than the 2008, 2009, 2010 was that money that the Federal Reserve printed back then never really made it in the hands of consumers. And a lot of you all have received checks in the mail from the government. Kids have received checks. Your grandparents have received checks. And so those checks have made that money that the Fed created made its way into the economy. And the measure of money, the M2, which is a technical term for how much money is actually floating around, is up about 27% from a year ago. So to think that we're not going to go through inflation, I can't guarantee you we are, but to think that we're not, it's maybe not being realistic with the data that's out there that suggests that there's going to be a pressure to push things up. And commodities are, they're probably one of the most pure examples of just supply and demand, is that if there's a lot of money out there and then somebody needs some corn or some wheat or something, it's going to push those prices up.
Yeah, very good. That's all I wanted to talk about on the markets. How about you?
I just want to talk about how things really, it has to do with the long lines and the repetitive nature of this market, and how things really aren't new. There's no guarantees in anything in the market. There's no assurance that that something that happened in the past is going to happen or not going to happen in the future. But there's definitely a rhythm out there in the market that is very sounds very similar through time, and it has a very similar look when you look at it, and it's trying to get it on my screen real quickly.
I like what Keith is doing here. You see, we all have our challenges on this show, and one of those challenges is we really strive not to share specific stocks with you. We're trying to play by the rules, but we want to communicate. In some of these things, Fox News, CNN, they're allowed.
These last couple of days, I just thought, what a amazing looking chart. It did exactly what I expected it to do. I didn't get it right, if I was going to speculate in it, but it wasn't long lasting. It wasn't a buy and hold investment. And the problem with, thinking what woulda, shoulda, coulda, is chances are you wouldn't have bought it. And chances are if you did buy it, you wouldn't have sold it properly. And chances are you would have had an emotionally difficult time getting nowhere and fretting over what you did or didn't do.
One of the comments that I heard about this concept, not necessarily this specific example, but this concept, because there are several of these out there within the last 12 months. But the concept was, oh, but if I sell now, I've got to pay all these taxes. and can you imagine the guy who had that big win? They're like, ooh, I don't want to pay ordinary income on this. I'm going to hold it for a year. And I'm not a tax guy. We're not offering tax advice. We got some great people we can steer you to. But capital gains rates, sometimes it's just good to pay the tax. It's good to pay the taxes. I would love to be the highest taxpayer in the United States of America with trades like that.
Mr. Market has a way of fixing your problems.
Who was it? Kenny Rogers? Is that?
Yeah, gambling.
Yeah.
Well, if you were playing around out there, I hope you didn't harm yourself or your financial situation. But also, I would hope that if you're trading independent of us and you're buying investments independent of us, if you happen to notice a stock chart or something that you're trading in that just shoots straight up like a rocket ship, you probably ought to pay close attention, because it's not sustainable. Just like a jet can't go at that ascent for very long, the stocks can't do it. It was just not enough demand out there to cause those things to shoot up like that.
And several of you have told us that you have these play accounts. And I think that's great, because you're staying curious in the marketplace. You're learning a new skill. You're learning about markets in general. And Keith once told me, I made a pretty ridiculous trade, 4 or 5 years ago in a company I really liked, but I lost a whole bunch of money. And I told Keith about it, and he says, that's just your tuition to Wall Street. And so if you had to pay some tuition to Wall Street this week or in the future, it's okay. But the main thing is there something to be learned from it?
Yeah, and I think if you are trying to learn, our Curious Investors commentary and discussion that we do on a regular basis on Saturdays is really helpful. And also, we talk about important aspects of investing in there, because there's not going to be many of those sort of situations that we just discussed that come along. And usually by the time they become aware to most people, that the story's already over. And that's kind of what happened with that one, I think. And so just be careful if you get those headline news stock ideas, because once everybody knows about it and it's had that kind of an ascent, it's probably ready to smack some people in the face and drop in value. And so if you're going to play around out there, just know you're playing around. Don't take serious money and put in something like that, because it is dangerous to do that.
Yeah.
Well, we were talking a couple weeks ago, and I said I'd talk last week, but I didn't talk about it. But I was thinking about this idea of objectivity, and that's a big word for self-honesty. Maybe is how objective am I about my situation? And the longer that I've been helping families with their finances, the more I see how difficult it is to make objective decisions, because our upbringing, the theories that we've heard, maybe past examples of things,
Experiences.
have built in our belief system, which may or may not be true about a situation, and then it consequently, and then it
happens again.
makes us make bad decisions. Because our ability sometimes to be honest with ourselves about a situation can be one of our biggest problems. And I think the role that we bring to our clients and our friends and as financial advisors is, I think we can be really objective about you. And that's why you would probably want to have a financial advisor, one that's not afraid to be honest with you, because if somebody was afraid to be honest with their client, then they're not going to bring that objectivity to the conversation. But I was just thinking about, I might have mentioned this in the past, like the idea that I'm a good driver. Like we were having lunch a couple of years ago, Doug and I were with a client of ours in Louisville, and he just, matter of fact, has said he's an average driver. And I sat up and I thought about that, and I was like, man, that's a really honest guy, like that he's an average driver. And so then I started thinking about, well, if you were probably 16 to 25, there's no way, maybe 16 to 20, maybe there's no way you're an average driver at 16 to 20. I mean, it shows that bell curve last week, and so you would probably be a poor to average driver if you're between 16 and 20. And you begin moving yourself maybe beyond the average between 20 and 25. And I think, I don't remember if you and I had this conversation, but it seemed like about 25 to 35 would be when you would be the very best driver you're going to be. You have quick reflexes, your vision and hearing is the best. You've got enough experience behind you to trust the car and understand the car. And you're just starting to get distracted by those little miniature humans behind you in that 25 to 35 range. But then once you have all that action behind you, you're going to tail off a little bit. And so then suppose you're my age and you can see okay, definitely not as well in the dark. So to think that I'm a good driver would be complimenting myself and not dosing myself in reality. Does that make sense? And then if I was, say I was 85, there's just no way that I'm even an average driver at 85 compared to where my driving skills are not going to improve in the next 25 years. And so to be honest with myself about driving, as an example, is a financial decision. We know people that have not been honest and then got in car wrecks and cost their families or their estates hundreds of thousands of dollars because they haven't been objective about that. And so objectivity is really a financial decision that most people don't really consider, I think. I just, when I think of what things need to be objective of, the guy that gets suckered into answering the question about, does this dress make me look whatever, just seems like the person asking the question probably already has the answer, and the guy that answers it is not being very objective with himself. and there's just a lot of things like that, like a house. Like a house is a financial decision most people aren't objective about, I don't think. And a young person is hurt. I need to. Sorry, man.
I'm offended.
I need to quit paying rent, is what they heard, because I think they're wasting money paying rent, right? And rent may be the best financial decision, but they're not using a level of objectivity. And then they end up buying more house than probably they should, and then they fill the house with things that, and nobody's really helping think objectively through it. And then say, somebody my age, I bought too much house, now I've got all this house with all these bedrooms, these attics and all this stuff full of stuff, and I'm not being objective. I think, I'm gonna turn 60 this year. I think, well, when I'm 70, I'll start clearing that thing out. And that's probably not gonna happen when I'm 70. When I'm 70, I say when I'm 80, I'll clear it out. And what I'm saying is, I've got a nice little inheritance for my kids called my attic or my garage. And objectivity would say, you know what, maybe that's not really true. Maybe I'm not gonna do that. So anyway, I just was thinking about this in a lot of areas of life, that just having honesty and honest conversations with not only your financial advisors, but even with your family members can help you really sort through some important decisions in life.
That's good. And we are also in the just the beginning, really, of tax season. And some of the other pieces of feedback that we've been receiving lately are 1099 information, tax information. LPL began sending out 1099s, I think on the 29th. Yes, January 29th. And so if you haven't received yours, chances are it's going to be coming to you soon. There will be some 1099s that are being delivered throughout February. And so if you have a question about yours, feel free to give us a call, or you can get on to your account view and you can print off your 1099 or email your 1099 directly from account view, which is a pretty cool feature too. There's not a lot of change in the tax code for you and for me this year, but if you do have some questions and you want to get some feedback from someone, again, we'd be happy to steer you towards the professionals. And something to think about in line with that is, are there things that we want to do differently for 2021? And I would recommend right around now through mid-spring is the time to get that stuff done. I mean, you could wait until fall or winter to see how this year looks for you, but I'd encourage you to get it done now. That way you're not pressed for time in the future. So this could be RMDs, this could be beneficiary distributions, this could be thinking through, am I going to sell my house? Am I going to buy another home? These types of decisions. I'd just like to encourage you to meet with us now. Let's get those things on the books for 2021.
Next day, April 15th, we're going to have a food truck here. So look out for an official invite in your email. We'll be putting it on Facebook and stuff, but Food Truck Fun Day, AKA Tax Day, April 15th. Come stop by.
Yeah, good call.
And just think about it, April 15th, There won't be snow on the ground. The sun's going to be shining. It's going to be the best day of the year when you come by on April 15th.
All right, thanks everyone.
See you guys.
Bye.